If disaster were to strike, as it has tended to do throughout the course of history, if it were to strike some of the most formidable contenders in the national championship picture, who would be best set up to handle that? So to put a more specific point on this prompt for us here, the question I'm trying to answer here is, if the quarterback for some of these contenders were to go down, who is best set up to handle that? I think Ohio State is one of the more intriguing ones to watch. At the time of us being live, they have the second best odds to win the national title, to my understanding. You brought in Will Howard. He is what I think a lot of Ohio State fans have their hope built on for their postseason aspirations, because Kyle McCord, good, not great, definitely wasn't good in the big spots he needed to be good in, most notably Michigan. Will Howard, if he goes down, I think that you are still in a spot to where you don't say the sky is falling. You don't mail it in. You don't say, oh, wow, what a waste of a season. Now, however, you do have to adapt your game plan a little bit, because if Will Howard goes down, you're probably tossing the keys to Devin Brown, big 33 out there. I love the fact that he wears 33 as a quarterback. That's freaking awesome. You also maybe would factor in a guy like Julian Sayin. He was really talented during the spring game. We saw him slinging around. You heard rave reviews out of spring ball with him. He's a true freshman, so I don't know if he's your guy. Lincoln Keenholt's also talented. I'm going to go ahead and assume you're rolling with Devin Brown. Now, the big drawback here is you struggle then to maximize the number one wide receiver core in America. Like that's the obvious drawback. As good as your quarterback could be behind Will Howard, it's fair to assume there might be an acclimation period for them being the guy at Ohio State. Now, Devin Brown has played, I don't know if the most college football is the right verbiage. I suppose he's played the most out of this group. But still, he hasn't been a guy that's gotten like a ton of game reps. He made his first start in the Cotton Bowl, and that lasted all of like 35 seconds. Bless his heart. He got injured. The big benefit, though, the reason why I would say Ohio State to me is still pretty disaster-proof in this respect is because if Will Howard goes down and if you have to put me at quarterback, if you put me at quarterback Ohio State, we got another discussion. But if you put someone else at quarterback that's not Will Howard, you can still go full-blown bully ball. Now, the offensive line, you put some more pressure on them to be able to meet that call to action, to be able to answer the bell. But listen, I think you have the best backfield in America, because you went out and got Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, who is a 1,000-yard back in the SEC. And you got Travion Henderson, who, when he is healthy, he's also a 1,000-yard back. So you got talent and you got depth at that running back position to where you can say, all right, put the off-road tires on. Quarterback, get ready to throw right around 10 to 15 balls a game. We are going to pound the rock. We are going to make the opposition say, uncle, lock in. And then on the other side of the football, you have, on paper, I believe, the best defense in America. Now, again, on paper to translate into the field are two very different things, but like the way they're built, man, Caleb Downs, we talk about him a lot. I think he's the best safety in America, if not the best defensive player in America. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. You got some dudes, all right? There's some dudes on that roster that can hold it down to where if you have to revert back to last year's formula and be defensive-led, you can do that. The difference with me, with why I think they are disaster-proof, is because of what they have in the run game to get a little bit more going offensively. So even if the worst-case scenario happens, they're going to be okay. I think at the worst, they are still a 10-2 football team with a backup. How much the quarterback can do for them without Will Howard will dictate their national title hopes. But in terms of them making the college football playoff, I think they're more than fine trotting out there with anybody at quarterback based on what they have on that roster. Now, the most intriguing team here in this whole disaster-proof conversation around these contenders is Texas. The reason for that being, Quinn Ewers, if we're using history as our teacher, has not yet played a full season at Texas. He's gotten hurt the last 2 seasons. He's missed a game here or there. So with that being said, who's the backup quarterback in Austin? Oh, yeah, Arch Manning. So needless to say, there would be a tremendous amount of storylines coming out of Austin if that were to be the case. The thing why this is also intriguing is I think when you look at Texas and how they operate offensively, yes, they want to run the football. Yes, they want to be tough in the trenches. But like to call a spade here, Sark's offense is quarterback-centric. It's still quarterback-driven. It's still, hey, Arch Manning, we're going to put a lot on your plate here to allow us to be successful offensively. We got to make you, or we have to equip you to make quick decisions in the RPO and things of that nature. So, yes, it's a run-first scheme, but you'd put a lot on Arch. And I think if Arch were to be the quarterback for you this year, if disaster were to strike, I don't know that he would be able to, if we're calling the Texas offense a Ferrari, where it's just roll with me here. I don't think Arch Manning is whipping that Ferrari the same way that Quinn Ewers is. Hasn't played as much college football, hasn't been in college as long, hasn't had as much game experience. But with that being said, I still think that Arch could get you on the highway and put you in the carpool lane and allow you to be successful. Like, I think the spring game was a pretty good indicator as to what he has under the hood and how much progress he's made since he's been in Austin. Just compare his 2 spring games if you want to have further proof of that. So I don't think Texas would be sunk by any stretch of the imagination if you do have to tag in number 16. I think it's also worth noting, we talk about Sark and his offense. A big reason for Arch Manning going to Texas, if not the sole reason, was Steve Sarkisian and the way he's a quarterback whisperer. So I say all that to say Steve Sarkisian and his way with quarterbacks, I think he could also tailor this offense more towards Arch Manning's skill set and put him in position to be successful. I was talking to somebody in the quarterback world in the last couple of weeks, and we got to talking about Arch Manning and got to talking about how he's going to fit when it's his time at Texas. And what I was told is Arch Manning and his release is so quick to where the quick game for Texas, with all the skill players they have, they're going to get it out. They're going to spray the ball around the field for him and allow him to really basically show off his brain and allow him to beat the defense before the play even starts and get the ball to the right guy quickly. So all that's to say, I think for Texas, if the worst case scenario happens, I think of this entire group we're going through, they may still have the highest ceiling without their starting quarterback because of how good Arch Manning could be. It's a very big if, but Texas, I think they're relatively disaster-proof when it comes to their college football playoff aspirations. Now, speaking of other talented backup quarterbacks now, Dan Lanning, and this kind of flew under the radar a little bit because of how crazy that first portal window was. He went out and landed not just the starting quarterback for this year for Oregon. He went out and got the quarterback of the future in Eugene. He says, Dylan Gabriel, why don't you come play one more year for us? Oh, also Dante Moore, 5-star from the class of 2023. You can come play for us too. How about that? So they have not one but 2 super talented quarterbacks in Eugene. If Dylan Gabriel does go down, there's good news for Oregon fans. Not that Dylan Gabriel goes down. That's obviously bad news. The first good news, if you have to go to Dante Moore, is Will Stein's offense demands much more of a quarterback from a football IQ standpoint than it does from a physical standpoint. Like, you're not asking Dante Moore to drop back there and stretch the field and be able to throw the ball 40, 50 yards downfield every other snap. Like, the average depth of target last year for Bo Nix was 6.8 yards an attempt. And that was one of the things that the social media quarterbacks harped on him for was, oh, he can't push the ball downfield, he can't do this, he can't do that. Bo Nix can be just fine. He was successful last year at the highest level for a reason. He was a Heisman finalist for a reason. But the fact remains here, the arm talent, the physical ability for Dante Moore is not going to limit this Oregon offense. Same thing was said about Arch is true about this Oregon offense. Get it out quick to playmakers, get it to Tez Johnson, get it to Evan Stewart, hand the ball off, and let's roll. I also think it's worth noting that Dante Moore, should he have to take over out there in Eugene, he's not getting game reps for the first time. Now, is the Big Ten a bit of a different beast than the Pac-12? Yeah, for sure. But I also think it's fair to say that the growing pains that Dante Moore experienced last year at UCLA could ultimately end up being an asset for him if he ends up being the guy at some point in time for Oregon. So the defense, I think, for Oregon also is a major asset here. The playmakers around him will be enough to support him. I think that Oregon is good enough around the quarterback position to where if Dante Moore has to step in, to me, they're still a college football player, or still a college football playoff team with a 5-star player for them at quarterback from the class of 2023. Now, last team to get to here, the Georgia Bulldogs. The Dogs, man. A lot of your hope if you're a Georgia fan is built on Carson Beck in year 2 and making that next step, which is funny to say because he was already phenomenal a season ago, completing north of 70% of his passes. But Georgia is disaster-proof for a couple of reasons. Gunnar Stockton would be the guy to step in for you. And Gunnar Stockton was a top 10 quarterback in the class of 2022, so he's got some juice in his own right. Surprise, surprise. Georgia's got more talent on the roster behind their starters, kind of how Kirby Smart has made his bed the last few seasons. College football and football in general the schemes have changed and the rules have changed and we've seen uniforms change, but like, you know what hasn't changed? Big people move small people. That's it. Big people still move small people. And for my money, the combo of Georgia's offensive line and defensive line in a package I think is the best in America. And so when you look at who would play quarterback for Georgia, you're still handing the ball off a fair amount of the time. You're probably going into some games and saying, all right, hey, Gunnar, we're not going to throw it 30 times. We're going to ask you to make some big plays on third down. Can you do that for us? Great. Also, good news, we got not just a great backfield for you in Trevor Etienne and Roger Robinson, we also got you some toys to play with here. We got Colby Young from Miami, who's a dog for you. You got Dominique Lovett, gets another year in Georgia's system. Like all these things, combined with the trench play Georgia's going to have, is going to help whoever's playing quarterback back there. You hope it's Carson Beck, but if it is Gunnar Stockton, he's going to be walking into a furnished apartment, as Colin Cowherd would say. I think it's also worth noting that if Gunnar Stockton does end up being the guy, he's a different player than Carson Beck. Got a little bit of mobility to him. His senior year of high school, he ran for almost 1,000 yards on the ground. Now, running for 1,000 yards in high school and running for 1,000 yards in the SEC, different things, no denying that. But I think that the defenses and the way they prepare for Georgia, you have to switch it up a little bit when you got 14 back there as opposed to 15. Because Carson Beck, as good as he is, he's not really someone that makes you overwhelmingly nervous on the read option game or someone to tuck it and run and ad-lib. Gunnar Stockton is that guy. He is someone that would make you nervous. So I still think that Georgia makes a college football playoff run. I think they can still go win a national title, quite frankly, if they have to, without Carson Beck in the game. Now, you would obviously, if that were to be the case, probably ask a little bit more of Gunnar Stockton. You ask him to progress with the team, with the roster, and kind of grow up throughout the course of your season. But Georgia has stocked the cupboard over the course of the last however many seasons for a reason. I promise you Kirby Smart is getting Gunnar Stockton still a lot of reps during practice. Georgia's disaster-proof, as is Oregon, as is Texas, as is Ohio State when it comes to the 2024 season. So we hope and pray and wish against any injuries for anyone this season, but if disaster does strike, I think those teams are more than well equipped to be able to handle it. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.